Once upon a time in the restless heart of Lagos, a city that never sleeps but always dreams, there lived a young woman named Kemi Shade. She was 29, ebony-skinned, with eyes that saw through masks and a voice soft enough to calm storms. People said she was beautiful, not the loud, flashy kind that Lagos parties celebrated, but the quiet, deep kind that made strangers turn twice. Kemi lived in a modest duplex in Lekki Phase 1, not far from the traffic-heavy Admiralty Way, where the scent of grilled suya and car fumes danced in the air. Her home was neat, filled with plants and paperbacks, a contrast to the chaos of the city around her. She was a bridal stylist, a master with her hands, known for turning simple fabric into living art. But more than that, Kemi was a bridesmaid for hire. Not the fake, Instagram kind. She had become a trusted companion to dozens of brides. But this next wedding wasn't just work. It was personal. The bride was Ijeoma Udegbe, her best friend since university, the one person who knew her first heartbreak, her childhood nickname, and the scar behind her left ear. Ijeoma was vibrant, bold, and breathtaking, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made it hers. Their bond was real. Sisters, not by blood, but by years, tears, and shared secrets. Ijeoma was getting married to Oba Bankole Alabi, the youngest of the Alabi oil dynasty. A Lagos billionaire with clean suits, sharper eyes, and lips that always said the right things. Kemi had met him at their engagement dinner. He smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement. But when he smiled, the whole room smiled with him. Still, something in Kemi's spirit did not rest. She couldn't explain it, not yet, but it started the day Oba proposed. It was a private yacht party on the lagoon. Candles, a drone photographer, and a diamond ring that looked like it had been stolen from a royal museum. Ijeoma screamed, cried, kissed him, and jumped around. Kemi smiled, but it never touched her chest. From that day forward, the wedding plans became a Lagos headline. Hashtags, vendor tags, blog interviews. Ijeoma was everywhere. Oba spared no cost. They had 6 coordinators, imported orchids from Nairobi, 2 halls booked in 6 and Ikoyi, just in case. And still, Kemi was the one Ijeoma trusted with the most delicate tasks, selecting fabrics, dealing with tailors, organizing dress rehearsals, calming family tension. She was maid of honor, unofficial project manager, and emotional therapist, all in one. But under all the glitter and gold-plated decor, Kemi began to notice things. Little things. One night, while helping Ijeoma fit her custom Zahir Murad gown, Oba had walked into the room and barely looked at the dress. Instead, his eyes lingered on Kemi's reflection in the mirror just a little too long. And when she caught his stare, he smiled and said, "You always look like you're hiding something, Kemi." She laughed it off. But it stuck. Another time, while picking fabric in Balagan Market, Ijeoma's mother, Madame Rose, made a comment, half joking, half serious. "Oba is too fine to be tied down. I hope my daughter can keep him." Kemi raised her brow. "She doesn't need to keep him. He should stay on his own." Madame Rose chuckled and turned away, but Kemi felt the message buried in the laughter. As the wedding drew closer, Kemi found herself sleeping less, dreaming more. She started journaling again, something she hadn't done in years. Her entries were short, raw, confused. "I love her. But I feel like I'm walking her to a fire. He looks at her like she's a trophy, not a partner. Why does her mother keep acting strange?" Then came the rehearsal dinner. It was held in a high-rise rooftop lounge in Eco-Atlantic, with jazz playing and wine flowing. Oba gave a speech, smooth, charming, humble. Everyone clapped. But Kemi noticed something. Oba didn't mention love once. He spoke of legacy, alignment, good genes, partnership, power couple. But not once did he say, "Ijeoma is the love of my life." That night, Ijeoma and Kemi sat together in her bridal suite at Maison de Luxe Hotel, going over the program. Ijeoma beamed as she talked about her future, 3 kids, a house in Dubai, a skincare brand deal she had lined up. Kemi listened, nodding, smiling. But when Ijeoma asked, "Why are you so quiet lately?" Kemi said, "Just tired." But that wasn't the truth. The truth was, She had a sinking feeling. Like the ground under this wedding was too shiny. Too slippery. And as they sat in the candlelit room, a knock came at the door. It was the concierge. He handed Kemi an envelope. "This came for you." No name. Just her suite number. Inside, one sentence was written on a cream-colored card. "What you're looking for is on the 11th floor. Room 1104. Tonight." Kemi's heart pounded. She looked at Ijeoma, still humming to herself while applying lip gloss in the mirror. She didn't know it yet, but that night would change everything. The envelope was still warm in her hand. Kemi looked at the cream-colored card again, reading it 3 times as if the letters would rearrange themselves into something more comforting. "What you're looking for is on the 11th floor. Room 1104. Tonight." She glanced at Ijeoma, now lying on the bed in her floral robe, scrolling through TikTok wedding dances and giggling. The air smelled of roses, vanilla lotion, and scented candles. It was peaceful, too peaceful. But Kemi's heartbeat was beginning to sprint. "Babe," Ijeoma said without looking up, "did the concierge bring my nail repair kit?" Kemi slipped the card into her bra calmly. "No, just something for me. From the front desk." "From who?" "No idea," Kemi replied, grabbing her purse. "Let me go check downstairs. I'll be back in 10. Ijeoma didn't look up. "Please, don't take too long. I want to try my second dress with heels." Kemi nodded. But when she stepped into the hallway and the door clicked behind her, a different version of her emerged. One with sharp eyes, quick breath, and a strange sense of foreboding in her stomach. She pressed the elevator button. 11th floor. The ride felt like eternity. Every ding of the passing floors was a heartbeat louder than the last. She thought about ignoring the card. Maybe it was a prank. Or worse, a trap. But something deeper, something ancient and female and intuitive, told her to go. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. The hallway was quiet, carpeted, dimly lit. Room 1104 was at the far end, tucked between 2 marble columns. She walked slowly. Her fingers grazed the wall as she passed the rooms. 1101, 1102, 1103. Then 1104. She paused. No sound. She leaned closer. Still nothing. She was about to knock, until she heard it. A giggle. Low and sultry. Then Oba's voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Your daughter has no idea." Kemi froze. Another voice followed, soft, older, seductive. "I taught her how to keep a man. Shame she didn't learn fast enough." Kemi's throat dried instantly. That voice. It was Madame Rose. Ijeoma's mother. Her breath caught in her chest. Another giggle. The unmistakable sound of kissing. Then a moan, not of surprise, but of pleasure. Kemi's feet wobbled beneath her. Her back slid against the wall as she crouched down, her mouth open, hands shaking. She pulled out her phone. Hit record. The voices became clearer. "Oba. After the wedding, I'll set you up in Banana Island. You'll never have to share a thing with her. Rose, that girl is too soft. Too naive. She thinks love keeps a man like you. Let her keep playing fairy tale bride. We know the real game. Oba, and I love how you play it." Kemi's hand flew to her mouth to muffle a gasp. She pressed her back harder against the wall. Then rose again. "Just make sure she signs the prenup without reading." "Oba, already done. Ijeoma signs anything I say. She thinks she's marrying a husband. She's marrying a handler." Laughter. Another moan. Kemi turned off the recording and stood slowly, her legs trembling. She felt dizzy, violated, but most of all, furious. She didn't knock. She didn't scream. She turned and walked back down the hallway like a ghost. By the time she returned to the suite, Ijeoma was trying on a silver-stoned osso oak gelly, standing in front of the mirror, practicing her smile. "Kemi, where did you go? I tried calling you." Kemi managed a weak smile. "Reception. Bad signal. You look like you've seen a ghost." She stared at her best friend, so beautiful, so happy, so clueless. "I'm just tired." I think the planning is getting to me. Ijeoma laughed. Tell me about it. This wedding is turning me into a bridezilla. Kemi nodded slowly. And for a second she wondered if silence was kindness. But no, silence was complicity. Still, she said nothing. Not yet. Because now she had something they didn't expect. The truth. And a weapon. The next morning, Kemi met with Tade, her cousin, a tech engineer who owed her a favor. She gave him the phone and the audio file. No questions asked. I need this cleaned up, she said. Louder. Clear. Something I can play, without doubt. Tade stared at her. What's going on, Kemi? She smiled faintly. Just make it sharp. That afternoon, she returned to the hotel and slipped into the chaos of wedding prep. The decorators were arranging fresh orchids in the lobby. 2 horses arrived for the bride's entrance. Journalists from Naija Wedding Weekly hovered around the parking lot. Everything screamed wealth, class, perfection. But underneath it all, Kemi could feel the stench of rot. She entered the bridal suite again, acting like nothing had changed. Kemi! Ijeoma beamed, hugging her tightly. I don't know what I'd do without you. Kemi hugged her back. But something in her eyes had hardened. Later that night, as the girls laughed, drank Zobo cocktails, and took boomerangs in matching pajamas, Kemi stood near the window staring at the moon. She could hear them behind her. Bride of the year. Oba is so lucky. He better treat you like a queen. Kemi didn't speak. Because she now knew the truth. Oba didn't want a queen. He wanted an heir. He wanted control. And worse, he already had the mother. As Ijeoma danced in her excitement, her mother, Madame Rose, entered the room with a tray of puff-puffs. My beautiful girl, she smiled, kissing her forehead. Tomorrow, your life changes forever. Kemi's stomach turned. She excused herself to the hallway and stood there, her heart pounding against her ribs. She opened her phone and listened again. She thinks she's marrying a husband. She's marrying a handler. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just closed the app and began to plan. The morning sun poured into the bridal suite like a spotlight from heaven. The golden light kissed the marble tiles, bounced off the crystal perfume bottles, and danced on the lace of Ijeoma's veil as she stood near the mirror rehearsing her vows. Kemi stood in the corner, silent, dressed in a soft champagne robe like the other bridesmaids, but her thoughts were dark, heavy, and racing like an engine with no brakes. She thinks she's marrying a husband. She's marrying a handler. Your daughter has no idea. Let her play fairy tale bride. The audio played on repeat in her head, burning with every syllable. She wanted to scream, to grab Ijeoma and shake her, to rip the wig off Madame Rose's head and throw Oba into the gutter where he belonged. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not in front of everyone. Not without ruining the wedding and losing her friend forever. Instead, she waited for a quiet moment. And it came. While the other bridesmaids were outside taking pictures in the hotel garden, Kemi found Ijeoma alone, putting final touches on her dress in the inner room. Her back was turned. Her face calm. A bride in her moment. Kemi cleared her throat. Ij. Yeah. I need to talk to you. Ijeoma turned, frowning slightly. What's wrong? Kemi hesitated. I know you love Oba. I know this wedding is your dream. But, do you really know him? Ijeoma blinked. What do you mean? I mean, Kemi stepped closer, voice trembling. You've known him for barely a year. You've been planning this wedding for 8 months. But how much do you know about his life? His values? His secrets? Ijeoma's face tightened. Kemi, where's this coming from? Kemi's voice cracked. I just need you to trust me. Something is off. I feel it in my bones. I don't think this wedding should happen. The air went cold. Ijeoma's lips parted slowly, as if someone had slapped her. Kemi, she said in a measured voice, are you serious right now? Kemi stepped closer, desperate. Please, Ij, just pause. Don't go through with it yet. Give it a week. Delay the wedding. Take time to... Is this about Oba not smiling at you that day? Ijeoma snapped. Or the fact that he chose me and not you? Kemi blinked. What? Ijeoma's voice rose, hurt and angry. You've been acting weird since the proposal. Dropping hints. Making faces. Even Mama said you were giving jealous energy. Mama? Kemi echoed them. I've known you for 10 years, Kemi. You've never been able to keep a relationship. And now that I'm getting married to a billionaire, you suddenly feel something is off? Kemi's heart shattered. You think I'm jealous? Tears brimmed in Igioma's eyes. If you had concerns, you should have said something before the wedding week. But now? You want to sabotage everything? Kemi stepped back, swallowing her pain. I'm trying to save you. No, you're trying to save face, Igioma spat. Because deep down, you can't stand watching me win. The door flung open suddenly. Madame Rose stood at the threshold, arms folded. Kemi, she said with a cold smile, if you have doubts about the wedding, you're free to leave. But you will not poison my daughter's happiness with your insecurities. Kemi looked at her, the woman whose voice she had recorded whispering into her daughter's fiancé's ears, whose betrayal had birthed this nightmare. For a moment, the world went silent. Then Kemi turned to Igioma one last time. Look me in the eye, she whispered. If I was lying, would I be crying? But Igioma didn't answer. She just turned away. Kemi walked out of the room like a ghost. The other bridesmaids stared as she passed. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, breath shaky, heart wounded. And yet, she felt something shift. She had tried to warn her. Out of love. Out of loyalty. And she was rejected. Now, they would learn another way. She opened her phone. The audio file was now crystal clear, edited by Tade and titled, Play Me at the Wedding, Final Cut. Back in her own hotel room, she opened her suitcase. She had packed 2 dresses, the soft pink gown Igioma picked for the bridesmaids, and a second outfit she hoped she wouldn't need. It was deep purple, sharp-shouldered, with gold embroidery that wrapped around her waist like armor. A headpiece that resembled a warrior queen's crown. Jewelry passed down from her grandmother, symbols of truth and protection. She laid it out on the bed. Then, with quiet conviction, she whispered, Let them dance. Let the world see. That evening, as the wedding eve party began on the rooftop, Kemi arrived late, dressed in silence, walking like a shadow through the celebration. She did not smile. She did not laugh. She greeted with nods. Her eyes never left Madame Rose, who gave her only the briefest of glances before whispering something to a waiter. Oba didn't speak to her at all. But Kemi noticed he kept watching her from across the room, almost suspicious, like a man who felt a shadow was following him. But later that night, Kemi sat by the fountain outside the hotel, feet bare, watching the moon. Tate arrived quietly and handed her a small box, a hidden speaker. It's set, he said. One press. Loud enough to fill a hall. She nodded. Thank you. He looked at her. Are you okay? She gave a half smile. I don't know. Then he asked, why not play it for Igioma now? Before tomorrow? Kemi looked up at the sky, then whispered, because I tried. She chose blindness. Let the truth come wearing white, and break her heart like thunder. The night before the wedding was supposed to be a celebration, of love, of new beginnings, of forever. But for Kemi Shade, it was the final hour before war. While laughter echoed through the hotel's rooftop lounge, while guests clinked champagne glasses under fairy lights, while Igioma and Oba posed for pre-wedding pictures by the floral arch, Kemi sat in silence, her soul heavy with grief and vengeance. The events of the past 48 hours spun around her like a whirlwind. The recorded betrayal in room 1104. Madame Rose's chilling laughter. Igioma's rejection. The smirk Oba wore when no one was looking. Everything had shifted. This wasn't just a love story gone wrong. This was a well-executed deception, and Igioma was sleepwalking straight into it. In the bridal suite that night, final preparations buzzed around. The wedding planner, Auntie Ifioma, went over the order of events. Photographers did equipment checks. The stylists rolled in massive suitcases of makeup kits and galley options. And there, in the middle of it all, was Igioma, glowing. Radiant. Kemi, she called, noticing her friend standing by the window again, don't be so tense. You'll make your makeup artist work twice as hard tomorrow. Kemi forced a smile. I'm fine. You sure? She nodded. But she wasn't. Not even close. Hours passed. By midnight, everyone drifted to their rooms to sleep. But Kemi didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the hidden speaker in her palm, the recording still saved on her phone. She'd replayed it more than 20 times. Not because she doubted what she heard, but because she couldn't believe the depth of the betrayal. Oba hadn't just cheated. He had plotted, manipulated, deceived. And worst of all, he had help from the woman who raised Ijeoma. Her own mother. Kemi's tears fell in silence. Not for herself, but for her friend, the girl who once cried because her puppy went missing in primary school, the girl who stayed up all night helping her cram for W, the girl who swore they'd be in each other's weddings no matter what. And tomorrow, that very girl would walk down the aisle to her own doom. The next morning, Lagos woke up to wedding fever. The hotel lobby bloomed with white roses. Security was tighter than most political events. Paparazzi lined the gate as guests in flowing agbadas and glittering gowns stepped out of black SUVs. Hashtag Obagioma 2024 was already trending on Twitter by 8 a.m. Inside the bridal suite, Ijeoma twirled in front of the mirror in her first look, a delicate champagne lace dress with tiny crystals sewn into the sleeves. Her smile could have lit up the entire island. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered to Kemi. Kemi, dressed in the soft pink bridesmaid gown, placed a hand gently on her friend's shoulder. You deserve a beautiful day, she said softly. Ijeoma smiled. Thank you, Shade. I'm sorry about yesterday. I was just overwhelmed. Kemi nodded. It's okay. She didn't press the issue again. What was the point? The seeds had been planted. The storm was already gathering. As the bridal party moved downstairs toward the convoy of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys waiting outside, Kemi reached into her handbag and held the speaker one last time. If it's a performance they want, I'll give them a show. She slipped it into the side of her wrapper, right under the gelly folds where nobody would notice. She had rehearsed the timing. The moment Oba opened his mouth to say, I do. The moment Madame Rose reached for the microphone to bless her daughter's union. That's when it would happen. The truth would echo across the hall. And there would be no recovery from it. At the church, hundreds had gathered. The aisle was lined with white feathers and gold-trimmed roses. A live band hummed soft highlife in the background. Kemi took her seat near the altar, flanked by the other bridesmaids. Her eyes scanned the room, spotting Madame Rose near the front row, laughing with the chief bridesman. Oba stood near the altar, looking polished, proud, and smug. The officiant cleared his throat. The music changed. Everyone stood. The doors swung open. And Ijeoma, wrapped in layers of white, her veil glimmering, her smile wide and innocent, began her slow walk down the aisle. The crowd gasped in awe. Oba smiled. And Kemi? She reached into her wrapper and touched the switch. As Ijeoma floated down the aisle, draped in white and glowing with joy, the crowd turned into a sea of smiling faces and raised phones. The wedding hall inside St. Andrew's Elite Cathedral sparkled under massive crystal chandeliers. Every detail screamed luxury, from the 20-foot-tall floral arch at the altar to the violinists serenading the bride's slow steps. Influencers live-streamed, socialites whispered, and whispers of, Oba really pulled this off, rippled through the pews. But for Kemi Shade, seated just 4 rows behind the altar, the world blurred into one sharp thought. This is the last lie they will ever tell. Flashback, 36 hours earlier. The hotel room was dim, but the air was thick with something heavier than heat, guilt. Kemi had slipped back into the hotel that night after the rooftop dinner, convinced she had left her phone charger in the lounge. What she found instead was something she was never meant to hear. Voices. Whispers. Breathless laughter. She froze outside room 1104, recognizing Oba's deep voice. And another voice, silkier, older, but familiar. Madame Rose, she had whispered to herself in disbelief. She pressed her ear against the door. And what she heard would change everything. Voice recording. Oba, she's ready. The money's already in my Cayman account. Madame Rose, soft laugh. She's too eager. She thinks you're her destiny. Oba, all she wants is a big wedding. After that, you and I disappear. Madam Rose, she'll never recover. But she'll make us very rich. Oba, smirking tone, cheers to the perfect scam. Madam Rose, and to your favorite future mother-in-law. Kemi had stumbled backward from the door like she'd been stabbed. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and let it all play out. Every word. Every betrayal. Every giggle. She left quietly and began to plan. Back to present. The officiant raised his voice, drawing Kemi back to the wedding altar. Do you, Oba Aladameji Ajala, take this woman, Ijeoma Rose Nwankwo, to be your lawfully wedded wife? Oba smiled. I do. A thunder of applause shook the hall. Kemi's hand slipped toward the hidden switch in her wrapper. Her thumb hovered. Not yet. Let the deception simmer. Do you, Ijeoma, take Oba to be your lawfully wedded husband? Ijeoma beamed under her veil. I do. Another wave of applause. The priest raised his hands. If any man knows why these two should not be joined together. The crowd chuckled. It was tradition. A formality. No one ever interrupted at this point. Except, this time, someone did. A voice echoed through the loudspeakers, cutting through the priest's sentence. Oba, she's ready. The money's already in my Cayman account. Madam Rose, she's too eager. She thinks you're her destiny. Oba, after the wedding, you and I disappear. Madam Rose, she'll never recover. Oba, cheers to the perfect scam. Madam Rose, and to your favorite future mother-in-law. The hall froze. Time stopped. Everyone turned. Guests gasped. Phones dropped. Even the priest dropped his Bible. Oba's eyes darted around wildly. What is that? Turn it off. But the recording continued, blasting Betrayal in crystal-clear audio across the cathedral. Ijeoma staggered. Her veil trembled. Her knees wobbled. Mama? She whispered. Madam Rose had gone pale. It's fake. This is edited. This is nonsense. But her voice in the recording kept playing, a damning truth in her own words. Kemi stood up slowly, eyes locked on both of them. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply walked toward the altar, with the speaker in her hand. Every camera turned to her now. Every guest leaned forward in disbelief. The bridesmaids covered their mouths. The groomsmen didn't know where to look. Oba took one step back. Madam Rose whispered, "This girl is possessed." But Kemi? She stepped beside Ijeoma, who was trembling in her wedding gown, tears falling freely. And Kemi said calmly, "I warned you. I begged you. But you thought I wanted what you had." She turned to the crowd. I didn't want her life. I wanted her to live. Then she turned back to Madam Rose and Oba. This wedding is cancelled. She dropped the speaker and walked away. You could have heard a pin drop in that grand cathedral. The scent of roses and frankincense, once warm and comforting, now hung in the air like a trap. Half the guests were frozen in shock. The other half were already on their phones, tweeting, recording, or calling someone, anyone. The trending hashtag #Obajeoma 2024 twisted instantly into a firestorm. Hashtag wedding of the year. Hashtag scam of the century. Hashtag mother-daughter betrayal. Hashtag Kemi Shade was right. But none of that mattered to Kemi Shade as she stepped out into the blinding Lagos sun. She didn't flinch. She didn't look back. She didn't even wait for a ride. She walked, galley high, wrapper swinging, as if she were walking away from fire, not a fairy tale. And in a way, he was. Inside the church, Ijeoma collapsed into a pew, her face buried in her hands. Guests murmured around her, a mix of pity and gossip. Did you hear what Oba said? Her own mother, God forbid. That Kemi girl warned her. And she ignored it. This wedding is cursed. I'm out. Madam Rose was ushered away by two of her sisters, her face stony and tight. Oba kept yelling at the sound crew, swearing the audio was fake. But no one believed him. He was finished. The wedding was over. But the storm was just beginning. Said, Kemi reached the main road and finally flagged down a taxi. She didn't want to go home. She didn't want to go anywhere she was expected to be. So she told the driver, "Take me somewhere quiet." He nodded, no questions asked. As the city rolled past her, the crowded shops of Lekki, the waterfront mansions, the hawkers yelling, "Gala! Pure water!" Kemi's mind replayed everything that had brought her to this moment. Ijeoma calling her jealous. Oba's smug eyes every time she tried to speak. Madame Rose's manipulative charm. The sound of the recording echoing across the church. She'd done what she came to do. But why did it still hurt so much? Later that evening, the wedding scandal had made it to the blogs. Shocking, groom caught on tape plotting with bride's mother. Kemi Shade, the bridesmaid who brought the truth. Hashtag Obajioma scandal. What really happened behind the veil? Some praised her. Others called her dramatic. But one thing was clear. Kemi had become a name, one tied to justice, courage, and brutal honesty. And yet, she didn't feel powerful. She felt empty. Because in doing the right thing, she had lost the one person who mattered most, Ijeoma. Meanwhile, at a quiet hotel bar in Ikoyi, Ijeoma sat alone, still in her wedding dress. Her makeup was smeared. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages. Her heart felt like a cracked plate, broken in places that might never be glued back. And yet, as she scrolled through the trending videos, she paused when she saw one shot from the pews of Kemi walking out, straight-backed and proud. That moment, suddenly, the fog in her mind cleared. She wasn't jealous, Ijeoma whispered. She was right. The next morning, there was a knock on Kemi's door. She hadn't told anyone where she was. So when she opened it and saw Ijeoma standing there, no veil, no wedding ring, just swollen eyes and a trembling lip, her heart stopped. They stared at each other for a moment. Then Ijeoma said, "You saved my life." Kemi didn't know whether to cry or smile. So she did both. They sat in silence on the hotel balcony for a long time. No words. Just city noise in the background. Then Ijeoma finally asked, "How did you know?" Kemi replied softly, "I didn't. I just felt it. Every time he looked at you like he owned you. Every time your mother forced a smile too quickly. Every time you changed who you were to fit what they wanted. I didn't need proof. I needed you to trust me." Ijeoma wiped her face. "I didn't trust myself." They both sat quietly, watching the sun rise over Lagos. The world would keep talking. The scandal would live online forever. But for this moment, they had silence. The Lagos sun was merciless that Monday morning, but not as merciless as the headlines. Every blog, every gossip page, every radio show, they all had the same story plastered across their feeds. Groom and bride's mother caught in scandal. Wedding of the year ends in disaster. Billionaire groom exposed by brave bridesmaid. By noon, Oba's name was mud. His business partners started withdrawing from pending contracts. A luxury real estate deal he had announced just weeks before went cold overnight. The banks that once smiled at him with open arms began dialing back. And Madame Rose? Her face, once seen at every high society gala, was now a meme, her voice clip paired with mocking captions. "Cheers to the perfect scam." She couldn't step outside her house without neighbors whispering. But while the world cheered Kemi for her courage, the truth was her own life began to unravel quietly. Her tailoring shop in Lekki received mixed reactions. Some brides canceled their fittings, whispering that she was too dramatic, that they didn't want their ceremonies ruined by a truth crusader. Others praised her, calling her a hero in Gelly, but brought more gossip than customers. Even her landlord frowned when she passed, muttering, "This is why women shouldn't poke their nose into another family's business." Kemi smiled in public, but at night, in the solitude of her one-bedroom apartment, she cried. Because truth-tellers often pay in loneliness. Meanwhile, Oba called Ijeoma endlessly. Voicemails. Flowers. Even threats disguised as apologies. "It was a mistake. Your friend faked that recording. Don't throw away what we have." But Ijeoma didn't answer. She blocked him. Her silence was louder than any insult. Madame Rose, however, was not silent. One evening, as Kemi left her shop, she saw a black SUV parked by the curb. The tinted window rolled down. And there sat Madame Rose, face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. "Kemi Shade," she hissed, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Do you know what you've done? You've destroyed my family. You think the world will thank you? They will chew you and spit you out. Watch." Kemi met her gaze without flinching. "I didn't destroy your family. You did. The day you betrayed your daughter." The car sped off, but her words lingered in the air like smoke. That night, Ijeoma came to sleep at Kemi's apartment. She couldn't bear her mother's presence anymore. The two friends sat up on the living room floor with cups of hot tea, the Lagos night buzzing outside their window. Ijeoma stared into her mug. "You were right about everything. But tell me, Kemi, why didn't you just show me the recording earlier? Why wait until the altar?" Kemi's chest tightened. "Because you wouldn't have believed me. Not until everyone heard it too." Ijeoma nodded slowly, tears brimming. "And now, everyone has." The silence between them was heavy. Because though Kemi had saved her, she had also broken her. The next morning, the gossip blogs shifted their focus. Now, they weren't just mocking Oba and Rose. They were turning their eyes toward Kemi. Who really is Kemi Shade? Bride's maid or bride's rival? Insider claims she always had feelings for Oba. But rumors. Poison. Screenshots of her old pictures with Ijeoma resurfaced, twisted into narratives that made her look jealous, scheming, even bitter. And though Ijeoma tried to defend her, her voice was drowned out in the noise of social media. Kemi scrolled through it all in silence. Her heart hurt, not because strangers mocked her, but because she had given up her peace for someone else's truth. And the world was already twisting it. That evening, she received a call from her cousin Tate. "Kemi, don't go home tonight. I just overheard something. Oba is furious. He says you cost him millions. He's threatening to teach you a lesson." Kemi gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of lesson?" "I don't know. But stay safe. Please." She hung up slowly, looked around her empty shop, and whispered to herself, "They want a war? Then let them come. I'm not done yet." The city moved on fast, but Oba did not. By the second week after the scandal, Lagos was buzzing with new gossip. Another politician's mistress, a celebrity caught in Dubai. The blogs shifted quickly, as they always did. But for Oba Bankole-Alabi, the stain would not wash away. His businesses bled. Investors withdrew. His father refused to take his calls. The proud Alabi family name, once synonymous with oil money and luxury, now dragged through the mud because of a 6-minute audio file. And to Oba, there was only one person to blame: Kemi Shade. It began with whispers. First, anonymous blog posts suggesting that Kemi had fabricated the recording with AI tools. Then, fake receipts claiming she had been in love with Oba all along, painting her as a jealous bridesmaid who wanted him for herself. Next came the harassment. Men in dark glasses loitered near her tailoring shop. Strange calls rang her phone at midnight, silence on the other end. One evening, as she walked home from the market, a motorcycle screeched past, and a stone wrapped in paper landed at her feet. She opened it. "Stay out of men's business. Or next time, it won't be a stone." Her hands trembled, but her resolve didn't break. Inside her small flat, Ijeoma paced. "Kemi, this is getting dangerous. You should leave Lagos. Travel for a while. Stay with family in Ibadan or Abuja." But Kemi shook her head. "No. Running will make them think they can silence me. They need to understand, truth doesn't die because men throw stones." Ijeoma wiped her tears. "You're risking your life for me." Kemi took her friend's hand. "Not just for you. For every woman who thinks silence is safety. Someone has to break it." That same week, Madame Rose attempted damage control. She appeared on a talk show, elegantly dressed, voice dripping with fake sincerity. "My daughter was manipulated. That girl Kemi twisted everything. She has always been jealous of Ijeoma. She used technology to frame us." But as she spoke, the audience gasped when someone from the crowd shouted, "Madame Rose, your own voice betrayed you." The clip went viral instantly, further humiliating her. Still, the pressure mounted. On Friday night, as Kemi locked up her shop, 3 men approached her. They weren't customers. "You think you're smart, Ibi?" one hissed. "You ruined Oga's name. Now you want to walk free?" another added. Her heart pounded. She gripped her handbag tightly. But before they could step closer, a police siren blared down the street. Startled, the men melted into the shadows. A female officer leaned out of the patrol van. "Shade Kemi? You need to be careful. People are watching you." Kemi nodded faintly. But deep inside, a storm brewed. That night, unable to sleep, she stood by her window, watching the neon lights of Lagos flicker like restless spirits. The city was noisy. Horns blaring. Music booming from distant clubs. But inside her chest, there was only silence, the kind that comes before thunder. She opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "If they want to fight me with lies, I'll fight back with proof. Let the whole world hear it again." The next morning, she walked into a media house with a flash drive in her hand. The receptionist raised her brow. "What's this?" Kemi smiled faintly. "The truth. Play it." And when the recording hit the airwaves on national radio that Sunday afternoon, Lagos stopped. Market women turned up their radios. Danfo drivers raised the volume. Families in Ikorodu, Banana Island, Ikeja, Surulere, they all heard the same words. "Cheers to the perfect scam. Your daughter has no idea." The city erupted. This time, there was no denying it. No AI excuse. No fabrication claims. It was their voices. Unshakable. Oba's retaliation had failed. But the war wasn't over. Because truth had consequences. And Kemi was about to pay the heaviest one yet. The scandal had reached a fever pitch. Oba's empire was collapsing in real time. Madame Rose's name was a punchline at pepper soup joints from Ajigunal to Ikoyi. Ijeoma had moved out of her mother's house permanently, cutting ties so sharply the wound would never heal. But Oba, arrogant, stubborn, refused to go quietly. His publicist announced a rescheduled celebration at the Grand Azure Hall, Victoria Island. The excuse? To honor our families and clarify misunderstandings. But Kemi knew the truth. It wasn't about honoring anyone. It was about saving face. The man couldn't stand to be seen as a failure. And that's when Kemi Shade whispered the words that would define the next chapter. "If it's a performance they want, I'll give them a show." Kemi didn't tell Ijeoma everything. Not yet. She only said, "Trust me. Come to that reception. Wear what you like. Smile if you want. Cry if you must. But don't leave before the music stops." Ijeoma looked at her with weary, broken eyes. "Kemi, I can't face him again." Kemi held her hand. "You won't have to. I'll do the facing for you." On the morning of the reception, Kemi stood before her mirror. She didn't wear the pastel gown Ijeoma had chosen for her months before. Instead, she wore deep purple ochre stitched with gold, bold shoulder cuts, and a geli wrapped sharp like a queen's crown. Around her neck hung her grandmother's beads, a symbol of truth and protection. When she stepped into the Grand Azure Hall, heads turned. Some whispered admiration. Others muttered suspicion. But nobody could ignore her. Because she wasn't just a bridesmaid anymore. She looked like a witness walking to court. Inside, the hall glittered with chandeliers and mirrored walls. Oba stood at the center like a peacock, laughing too loudly, hugging too many guests, pretending nothing had happened. Madame Rose sat nearby, face powdered, smile painted, trying to reclaim dignity that no longer existed. The band played high life. Plates of jollof and goat meat were served. Cameras flashed. Influencers danced, pretending they weren't there for gossip. But in the midst of the glamour, Kemi felt only one thing: resolve. When the MC announced the couple's entrance, Oba strutted to the center, his voice dripping arrogance. "Thank you all for coming," he said into the microphone. "Despite recent, unfortunate rumors, love always wins. Today is proof that lies can never destroy destiny." The crowd clapped. But Kemi only smirked. Because tucked inside her beaded purse was a black device. The same speaker that had ended the wedding. Except this time, it carried more than 6 minutes of betrayal. It carried the entire recording. Every whisper. Every laugh. Every plan. She tapped the side of her purse. And waited. As the band struck up another tune, Kemi slipped into the shadows behind the stage. She spotted the sound technician, a young boy no older than 20. She leaned close, her voice calm but sharp. "When I signal, connect this." The boy frowned. "Auntie, this is risky. Do you want your name to trend for life?" She cut in. He blinked. "Trend." She smiled faintly. "Trust me." The boy hesitated, then nodded. Back on the dance floor, Oba spun, laughing, clinking glasses with the senator's son. Madame Rose adjusted her gelly and blew kisses to her friends. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked rehearsed. And that was exactly why it was the right moment. Kemi lifted her hand slightly. The boy plugged in the speaker. And in seconds, the hall was drowned in a familiar voice, Oba's own, dripping with arrogance. "She thinks she's marrying a husband. She's marrying a handler." The music cut off instantly. The dancers froze. Madame Rose dropped her wineglass. The full recording began to play, this time unedited, spilling every secret into the air like fire in a dry forest. Kemi stepped forward slowly, her gelly gleaming under the lights. She looked at Oba, who had turned pale. She looked at Madame Rose, whose hands shook violently. Then she said softly, but loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Let them dance. Let the world see." The room erupted in chaos. At first, the guests thought it was a prank. Some even laughed nervously, clapping along as though it were part of the entertainment. But the laughter died quickly when the voices from the speakers grew clearer, sharper, undeniable. "Oba, your daughter has no idea. Madame Rose, she's too naive. Let her play fairy tale bride. Oba, after the wedding we vanish. The Cayman account is waiting." Rose, cheers to the perfect scam. Gasps rippled across the hall like thunder. Wine glasses shattered. Forks clattered onto plates. Phones shot up, recording every second. Madame Rose shot to her feet. "Stop this nonsense," she screamed, her gelly slipping slightly as sweat rolled down her face. "This is fake. This is technology." But the voice on the loudspeaker laughed again, her laugh deep and distinct. Even her closest friends turned their heads away in shame. Oba staggered forward, grabbing the microphone. "Lies. All of it. Fabricated by a bitter bridesmaid." He pointed at Kemi, his face twisted. "She has always been jealous. She wants to destroy me." Kemi took one step forward. Her voice was calm, but every syllable cut like a blade. "Jealous of you, Oba? A man who sells love like a cheap commodity? A man who plots with a mother against her own child? I don't envy you. I expose you." The crowd erupted in whispers. "It's true. Imagine your own mother. Lagos society will never forget this." Ijeoma entered the hall. Her dress wasn't white anymore. She had torn off the lace sleeves, stripped off the veil, leaving only a simple wrapper tied around her waist. Her face was bare, eyes swollen, but her voice was steady. She walked slowly toward her mother and Oba, the crowd parting like water. "Oba," she said softly, "you made me believe in forever." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "And you, Mama, you taught me to trust you above all." Her hand trembled as she pointed at them both. "But today the whole world sees what I refused to see." The loudspeaker blared again, the part Kemi had saved for last. Rose's voice. "Just make sure she signs the prenup without reading. She thinks she's marrying a husband. She's marrying a handler." Ijeoma froze. The audience gasped again. She turned to her mother, eyes wide, tears streaming. You plan to sell me?" Madame Rose reached out, but Ijeoma stepped back. "Don't touch me," she cried, collapsing onto her knees. "Don't you dare touch me again." The hall was now a storm, shouting, recording, gasping, clapping, condemning. Kemi raised her voice above the chaos. "This hall was decorated for love. But today, it is decorated with truth. This dress was meant for joy, but today, it is worn for justice." She said I was jealous. But I was loyal. She turned to the guests. Let the world write about me. Let them twist my story. But remember this moment. Remember who plotted, who betrayed, and who stood for truth. Her words echoed through the speakers, louder than the band, louder than the cries. Oba tried to lunge at her. But 3 groomsmen restrained him. Phones caught the struggle, the desperation, the rage of a man losing everything. Kemi didn't flinch. She only whispered, "You said she was marrying a handler. But today, the handler has been handled." The crowd roared. Some clapped. Some shouted. Some shook their heads in disbelief. But nobody looked at Oba or Madame Rose the same way again. As the dust settled, Kemi took Igioma's hand. Together they walked out of the hall. No bouquet. No music. No applause. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows truth when it's too heavy to ignore. The Grand Azure Hall was still buzzing long after Kemi and Igioma walked out. No music. No speeches. Just fragments of conversation swirling like broken glass. Did you hear her own mother's voice? Lagos has never seen a disgrace like this. Kai, Oba is finished. He can never show his face in society again. Within minutes, the videos flooded social media. Millions of views. Hashtags exploding. Clips replayed again and again. Oba's arrogance, Madame Rose's betrayal, Kemi's calm unmasking. By evening, even international blogs carried the headline. Bridesmaid exposes groom and bride's mother in shocking Nigerian wedding scandal. But behind the applause, there was silence. Silence that settled heavily on Kemi's shoulders as she sat in her tiny flat, staring at the city lights through her curtain. She had won. But winning felt like ashes in her mouth. Her phone buzzed nonstop, strangers praising her courage, journalists begging for interviews, NGOs calling her a role model. Yet the only voice she wanted to hear was quiet. Igioma hadn't spoken since they left the hall. Meanwhile, Oba Banko Alabi's downfall was merciless. By Monday morning, his company shares dropped by 38%. 2 government contracts were terminated. A Dubai luxury apartment deal collapsed. Worse, leaked emails surfaced. Proof of money laundering. Proof of fraud. The recording had opened the door, and now the world kicked it wide. Oba tried to fight back, releasing a shaky video. "This is all fake. A jealous bridesmaid used AI. I love Igioma." But the comments section buried him alive. "Oga, not your voice we hear oh. Handler has been handled. Go Cayman, stay there." His empire was gone. Madame Rose, too, faced her ruin. Her women's foundation lost all sponsors. The board forced her to resign. Markets gossiped about her openly. Imagine selling your daughter like yam in mile 12. Shame can kill. She retreated into silence, shutting her gates, refusing visitors. But silence couldn't erase her shame. For Igioma, the pain was unbearable. One evening, she arrived at Kemi's shop in plain clothes, face bare, eyes swollen. She looked smaller, fragile, a woman carrying too much weight on her chest. They sat in the back room, just the 2 of them. Igioma whispered, "I don't know how to forgive her. My own mother. My own blood." Kemi held her hand. "You don't have to forgive her now. You just have to survive her." Tears spilled freely down Igioma's cheeks. "You saved me, Kemi. But you also broke me. How do I start again?" Kemi's voice cracked. "With time. With truth. With yourself." Yet even as they sat together, rebuilding trust thread by fragile thread, Kemi's own battles grew louder. Gossip blogs now twisted the narrative. Did Kemi plan the scandal for fame? Secret audio engineer revealed. Was it staged? Is Kemi Shade Lagos' new attention seeker? Some clients refused to come to her tailoring shop. Brides feared she'd ruin their weddings with drama. Old acquaintances avoided her at the market. She had fought for truth. But truth had left her alone. That night, as Lagos thunder rolled across the sky, Kemi stood on her balcony with a glass of water, staring into the storm. Her chest was heavy. Her heart was tired. But her spirit whispered, "This story isn't finished yet." Because though Oba and Madame Rose had fallen, the city hadn't seen the last of Kemi Shade. Not yet. The city had a short memory, But scars lasted longer. 2 weeks after the infamous unmasking at the Grand Azure Hall, Lagos society was already chasing new scandals. A minister's mistress in Dubai, a Nollywood star's broken engagement, a viral church fight. The blogs had moved on. But the shadow over Kemi Shade's life remained. At her shop in Lekki, some clients still whispered. Brides came with fake smiles, paid deposits, and then cancelled suddenly, citing family emergencies. Tailors who once admired her now avoided eye contact. Even the market women who sold her fabric muttered as she walked past. That's the girl who disgraced her own friend's wedding. Ah, don't let her near your marriage, she'll scatter it. She ignored them. Outwardly. But at night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if truth was worth the price of isolation. Ijeoma, too, was struggling. She stayed at Kemi's flat for a while, but the silence between them grew heavier with each passing day. Sometimes Ijeoma wept in the middle of the night, whispering her mother's name. Sometimes she snapped at Kemi without reason, then apologized instantly. The wound was still raw. One evening, she asked the question Kemi had been dreading. Kemi, what if I had married him? Would you still have played the recording? Kemi's chest tightened. She whispered, yes. Ijeoma looked away. Maybe. I would have hated you forever. Kemi's throat burned. Then it would have been worth it. Meanwhile, Oba was not finished. His empire had crumbled, but his pride remained sharp. In whispered corners of Lagos, his allies began spreading a new rumor. The audio was doctored. Kemi hired an engineer. This was all her revenge for being rejected. And slowly the gossip began to stick. By the third week, a blog posted an article titled, Bride's Maid or Bride's Enemy? Inside Kemi Shade's Motive. The comments section boiled. Some defended her. Others cursed her. And Kemi learned a bitter truth. Even when you expose liars, the world will still try to twist the story back onto you. One night, Tate came by her shop, worry etched into his face. Kemi, you need to be careful. I've heard things. Oba is trying to buy back his reputation. He wants to make you the villain. He has money. He can spin the story until people forget his voice. Kemi leaned against the counter, exhausted. Let him try. I'm not afraid of lies. Tate shook his head. But lies are louder than truth, Shade. And Lagos loves noise. That night, Kemi sat with her journal, pen trembling in her hand. She wrote, I have carried her pain. I have carried their shame. Now I must carry my own. She closed the book and looked at her reflection in the window. Her eyes looked older, tired, but also sharper, like someone who had walked through fire and come out scarred, but standing. The next Sunday, she went to church alone. She wore no makeup, no gelly, just a simple wrapper and blouse. The congregation stared as she entered, whispers rippled, phones clicked. But when she sat in the back row, she felt peace. Because for once, she wasn't hiding. She bowed her head and whispered, God, let my silence speak louder than their lies. Outside, as she stepped into the Lagos sun, Ijeoma was waiting at the gate. Her eyes were swollen, but her voice was steady. I've decided to leave Lagos for a while, she said. Too many memories. Too much noise. Kemi nodded. That might be best. Ijeoma touched her hand gently. But before I go, thank you. Even if the whole world misunderstands you, I don't. Not anymore. Kemi's eyes watered. She didn't speak. She just squeezed her friend's hand. That night, as she locked her shop, Kemi saw a note slipped under the door. It wasn't signed. Just 7 words, written in rushed ink. This story is not over for you. Her heart pounded. Because she knew exactly whose handwriting it was. Oba's. The note burned in Kemi's hands long after she found it. This story is not over for you. She knew Oba's handwriting, bold, jagged strokes like a man who always wanted to dominate even the page. But instead of fear, a strange calm washed over her. If he wanted a final round, she would give him one. 3 days later, whispers spread across Lagos high society. Madame Rose was hosting a forgiveness banquet. The press release said, a night of reconciliation and healing to prove that love conquers scandal. Everyone knew what it really was: damage control. An attempt to polish their names, repaint their shame with laughter and champagne. Kemi wasn't invited. But the note under her door was enough of an invitation. She dressed simply that evening, not in gelly, not in warrior purple, but in a plain black gown with no jewelry. She wanted no distractions. Just truth. The hall at Victoria Island gleamed with chandeliers and gold-draped tables. Waiters floated with trays of champagne. The city's elite gathered, whispering nervously as Oba and Madame Rose made their grand entrance. Madame Rose wore a shimmering gown, gelly stacked like a crown, smiling through her shame as though nothing had ever happened. Oba, in a white igbada embroidered with gold, walked beside her with the arrogance of a man who believed money could erase memory. They spoke to the press at the entrance. Rumors fade, Madame Rose cooed. Lies never last, Oba added, flashing his polished smile. And the crowd clapped politely. But as they sat at the head table, a ripple of silence moved through the room. Because Kemi Shade had just walked in. No escort. No smile. Just quiet, heavy presence. Every phone camera turned. Every whisper rose. Madame Rose's face froze. Oba's smile faltered. Kemi didn't wait for an introduction. She walked straight to the stage, her heels clicking against marble, her black gown flowing behind her. She took the microphone from the startled MC and spoke, her voice steady. This hall is decorated with gold. But gold cannot cover rot. The crowd gasped. This table is filled with champagne. But champagne cannot wash betrayal from the tongue. She turned to Madame Rose and Oba. They want forgiveness. They want applause. They want us to pretend we didn't hear their voices plotting to destroy a daughter's life. But truth doesn't disappear because liars wear lace and igbada. Murmurs erupted. Cameras flashed. Oba shot to his feet, shouting, "This woman is obsessed with me. Why can't she move on?" Kemi looked him dead in the eye. Because truth doesn't move on until it is heard. She turned back to the guests. Some of you called me jealous. Some called me dramatic. Some said I ruined a wedding. But today, I stand before you as proof that silence is complicity. If I had said nothing, a daughter would have been sold by her own mother. Her voice broke slightly, but she pressed on. This dress was meant for mourning. But tonight I wear it for justice. He said she was marrying a handler. But today, the handler stands exposed. The crowd roared, some clapping, some shouting, some recording feverishly. Madame Rose tried to speak, but the crowd drowned her out with jeers. Oba raised his fist in fury, but two security guards stepped between him and Kemi. Phones captured every second, sealing their disgrace forever. Kemi placed the microphone back on the stand. And with the quiet dignity of someone who had carried fire in her chest for too long, she whispered one last line. This is not revenge. This is remembrance. And Lagos will never forget. Then she stepped off the stage, leaving chaos behind her. The banquet was meant to heal reputations. Instead, it became a funeral for pride. The moment Kemi dropped the microphone and walked away, the hall split into chaos. Phones rose like a forest. Guests screamed. The band stopped playing mid-song. Security rushed forward but hesitated. They knew better than to drag out the one woman the whole world had seen standing for truth. Madame Rose crumbled first. Her gelly shifted, her painted smile finally cracked, and she sat frozen as insults rained on her like stones in a marketplace. Shame. Selling your own daughter. Mother turned Judas. Lagos will never forgive you. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for allies among the crowd. But even her closest friends turned their faces away. Oba still fought. He grabbed the microphone back, veins bulging in his neck. This is a conspiracy, he shouted, voice breaking. This woman is a jealous parasite. You think I'd ever? But the crowd booed him into silence. Someone shouted from the back. Handler, handle yourself. Laughter erupted, harsh and merciless. Oba's empire, already weak, collapsed completely in that moment. Not with dignity, not with grace, but with mockery. Meanwhile, Kemi Shade didn't stay to watch the wreckage. She walked calmly into the night air, her black gown trailing behind her like smoke. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust into her face. Auntie Kemi, do you regret your actions? Did you do this for fame? What message do you have for young women? She stopped briefly, her face lit by a dozen cameras, and spoke one final line. If telling the truth makes me a villain, then let history call me villain. At least the lies did not win. And with that, she walked into the shadows. By morning, Lagos was on fire again. Every news channel replayed Kemi's speech from the banquet. Every blog carried the headlines. Kemi Shade strikes again, Lagos elite in ruins. Mother-daughter betrayal now beyond repair. Oba Alabi, from billionaire to beggar of sympathy. Sponsors fled. Bank accounts froze. Political allies vanished. Oba and Madame Rose were blacklisted from every society event. They weren't just disgraced, they were erased. But while the city cheered Kemi as a hero, she sat alone in her flat, head bowed over her journal. Her phone buzzed with congratulations, interview requests, invitations to speak at conferences. But she didn't feel victorious. Because in the quiet of her room, the truth weighed heavier. She had destroyed them. But in the process, she had destroyed Igioma's faith in family. And some wounds, no speech could heal. That evening, as rain poured down over Lagos, a knock came at Kemi's door. It was Igioma. Soaked, trembling, eyes red from crying. I watched it all, she whispered. The banquet. The crowd. The disgrace. Kemi tried to speak, but Igioma raised her hand. You did what had to be done. But Kemi, I will never have a mother again. Do you understand what that means? Kemi's eyes filled with tears. I know. Igioma's voice broke. And no matter how many people cheer for you, I am still the girl whose own mother chose money over me. The two women fell into silence, the rain outside beating against the window like a drum of sorrow. The rain didn't stop that night. It poured over Lagos like the heavens themselves were cleansing the city of all its secrets. Inside her small flat, Kemi Shade and Igioma sat in silence. Two friends. Two sisters. Two women bound not by joy but by betrayal. The world outside hailed Kemi as a warrior, a truth-teller, a heroine, a woman who stood where others would have bowed. But in this room, there was no applause. Only grief. Oba vanished from Lagos. Some said he fled to Dubai. Others swore they saw him in London, begging old associates for handshakes. His empire was gone, contracts cancelled, accounts frozen, his once proud surname now a stain. Madame Rose retreated into seclusion. She never returned Igioma's calls. Not to explain, not to apologize. She became a ghost in her own house, living in silence, haunted by the echo of her own recorded voice. And Igioma, she left Lagos 2 weeks later. She told Kemi, I need to start over. Far away from the eyes, the whispers, the pity. Kemi hugged her tightly, tears soaking her shoulder. I'll be here when you return, she whispered. But deep inside, she wondered if Igioma would ever return the same. The city moved on, as Lagos always does. New scandals. New hashtags. New distractions. Kemi's shop remained open, but quieter. Brides came again, but their smiles carried caution, as though they feared the truth might follow them down the aisle. She didn't fight it. She accepted her new role, not just a tailor of dresses, but a tailor of truth. Some nights, she wrote in her journal, her words heavy with both pride and pain. I saved her from fire. But in saving her, I burned myself too. One Sunday morning, months later, Kemi walked through Balagan Market. The air was thick with fried plantain and pepper, traders shouting prices, children weaving through crowds. An old woman selling beads called to her. Auntie Shade, the brave bridesmaid. Kemi smiled faintly. I'm no heroine. The woman pressed a strand of coral beads into her hand. Maybe not. But because of you, many daughters will look at their mothers twice. Many brides will ask questions before signing. Truth has a cost, but you paid it so others could live free. Kemi clutched the beads, tears welling. For the first time in months, she felt a strange peace. That evening, she sat on her balcony, watching the sun set over Lagos Lagoon. The sky was painted in orange and purple, the water shimmering as though nothing bad had ever happened. She whispered into the wind. They took my peace. They took my name. But they did not take my truth. Her eyes closed, her heart finally lighter. Because even though the city would move on, even though history might twist her story, one thing would remain. She was the woman who stood. The bridesmaid who chose truth over comfort. The friend who carried fire in her hands and burned away the lies. And though it cost her everything, it gave her something priceless. Freedom. She didn't win back the years, but she reclaimed her name. And that's how Maid, a simple bridesmaid, became the woman Lagos would never forget.